Today we shall be looking at history of physical education. Man has always known the essence of physical activities from the very beginning of time. Man has also participated in different physical activities. The need to run, jump, fight, throw, and lift have been basic skills man has used. When talking about the history of physical education as an organized practice, we usually refer to ancient Mughal Empire, the Egyptian Empire, as well as the ancient Greek Empire. The most notable one in history was the ancient Greek, which later became a very big civilization. Ancient Greece was divided into 4 city-states, which are Athens, Olympia, Sparta, and Corinth. Now let's see physical education in Athens. The purpose of education in Athens was to produce good citizens. They knew the importance of physical fitness. Children were trained in music, art, literature, science, maths, and politics. Boys were taught at home until they were 6 years old before they were taken away from home. The boys went to school where they learned to read and write. They learned to play musical instruments, usually the flute or the lyre. So these boys were taught on different aspects of life, on how to become better citizens in life. They learned the poetry of Homer. They also learned how to debate and how to give a persuasive speech. They studied science and math and another subject. After school, they attended military school where they learned how to become good soldiers. Boys did not graduate from all the schooling they were required to take until they were about 20 years of age. They were taught different sports like archery, wrestling, and swimming. The main goal was not to create good soldiers, but to create a well-rounded young men which were strong, smart, and attractive. Girls did not go to school. They were taught at home by their mother. That was how the Athens, did theirs. If their mothers could read and write, they taught their girls how to do the same, as well as teaching them how to cook, sew, and do house chores. So majorly the girls were at home. Now let's look at physical education in Sparta. The Spartans were referred to as the warrior people. The purpose of education in Sparta was to produce and maintain a powerful army. In Sparta, the survival of the fittest began at birth for both male and female babies. The government practiced infanticide, where infants were abandoned and left for death if they had abnormalities. Spartan boys were taken to a military school called Agoge when they were 7 years old and graduated when they were about 20 years of age. They learned to read, write, but those skills were not considered very important like the Athenians, except for messages. Military school was tough on purpose. The boys were often hungry, beaten, and slept in the barracks. They were taught how to steal, lie, and get away with it. These skills, they said, could save their life someday. In Sparta, physical fitness was most important of all. They were taught sports like sword fighting, wrestling, archery, spear throwing, as these were important during war. The Spartan girls were to school to learn to be warriors. The school was not as brutal, but the girls in the ancient Sparta could wrestle and fight in order to defend themselves. The girls were taught how to kill. The Spartans believed that strong women produce strong babies. Besides, the women might have to defend the city if the men were away during war. Most of other Greek city-states wanted Sparta on their side. The Spartans were great friends to have in times of war because of their strong military. Now let's look at this short video for more emphasis on this topic.
Let's compare Athens versus Sparta, two Greek city-states. We start with location. Athens was near the sea and their military was the navy, while Sparta was inland and their military was an army. Each city-state had a different local god. For Athens, it was Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war, and for Sparta, it was Ares, the god of war. For jobs, in Athens, there were a lot of artisans, poets, and philosophers, while in Sparta, people were mainly warriors, although there were also some artisans. The economy of Athens centered around trade since they were so close to the sea. They had a marketplace called an agora, and they traded with convenient coins. However, Sparta relied on farming and conquering others. Their money was iron bars, which was pretty inconvenient. For government, Athens had a democracy and citizens voted for laws. In Sparta, there was an oligarchy, which was led by a few people known as the Council of Elders. In Athens, women had few rights. They had no say in government, and they mostly managed the home and raised the children. In Sparta, though, women had many rights. They could even own lands, have jobs, and they were expected to be strong to defend their land. Slaves in Athens were treated better than they were in Sparta, and some even had some job skill training. In Sparta, slaves had some rights, but for the most part, they were treated very poorly and harshly since they were prisoners of war. The purpose of education in Athens was to create good citizens, and only boys were educated. Military training started at age 18, while in Sparta it started at age 7, and education was for both boys and girls with the intention of making them strong, brave warriors. In summary, Athens was a more peaceful city-state with lots of trade and democracy. On the other hand, Sparta was all about conquering its enemies, and they had an oligarchy and a strong army.
Here is an evaluation question. I want you to answer it on your notebook. It's been a great lesson so far. I hope you learned one or two things from this lesson. Bye for now.